But even though there's a lot of small companies, they in a lot of cases are owned by the big companies. And one of the things we see at a lot of these trade shows is that small companies come, they present, they have good funding, and within 2 or 3 years, they're gone. They've either been bought by the big guys or they've gone out of business, forced out by the big guys. So we do have a real strong concentration of large companies. We are, because of the size of the market, the #1 brand in Seattle doesn't necessarily mean it even has a presence in New York City or in Florida because of our large geographic distance and even the differences in culture. We all speak the same language, but we all speak it a little bit differently, and our brands and consumption patterns are different. This is probably, of all the slides here, this is the most important slide. And this talks about the U.S. distribution system for food products. And we'll start at the top with domestically produced agricultural products. They either go into further processing or they go export. So they go to a manufacturer that's going to put it in the can or grind it or mill it or whatever. Those manufacturers then go through brokers. In the middle there is import product coming in, and we import a lot of products, some products that compete with product we produce domestically, like wine and water, and other products like dried mangoes we don't produce. So we bring it in, and most everything goes through a broker. And the broker is responsible, we'll talk more about that later, the broker is responsible for making the sales. They're the one who goes and calls on the retailer on a regular basis. They have friendships there, they have standing appointments, and they do the sales. Now, some of the big companies like Nestle have their own sales staff, and they are acting as a broker. Other companies will use outside brokers. I have to add it up, but there's probably a dozen companies that use their own sales reps. A lot of the rest of them will use the broker network. And from the food service or from the broker, you've got two distribution channels, two significant distribution channels. One is the food service, which is anything consumed off premises, out of your home. So it could be in a restaurant, it could be on a ferry, it could be in a prison, it could be in a school. And that business is very different from the retail business. The fact that in food service, it's all a function of what is the price per serving, because in most cases, the end consumer never sees the brand. So they're not worried about the brand image. They are worried about quality because they want to make sure they serve a quality product. But at the end of the day, it's a value of the combination of quality and price that puts it on the plate. So that's the nice thing about that from an import standpoint is you don't have to spend time and money building a brand. You let the brand owner do that. Same thing with private label. And private label goes more into the into the retail business than into food service, but there is a lot of food service private label as well. Cisco, for example, the largest food service company, has several thousand items under their own brand. They have 40,000 items within their network, but they have several that are under their own brand. The wholesale retail distributor, so the broker sells to the distributor sells to the retailer sells to the consumer. And that's why I was mentioned earlier on a decision process, even if we present product at a trade show, the broker or the buyer, the importer, is going to have to get approval ultimately from the end consumer. The guy at the retail chain has to be confident that they're going to sell the product. And the wholesaler will carry anything that the retailer wants if the retailer thinks he can sell the product. So, you have to convince the retailers, and the retailers have to be confident, put it in the right place on the shelf and sell it to the end consumers. But the wholesaler is, in a lot of cases, and I think I have a slide, it might even be, I have a slide coming up here, but basically the wholesaler is a truck to get it from point A to point B. They are not salesmen. They take orders, they're order processors, but they're an integral part of the distribution channel. This is a fee breakdown, and there's nothing that's black and white. It's not set up in a contract globally or nationally that this is what has to happen. But basically, if you have an importer that's just doing the importing, they're not handling the product, they'll charge a fee per container to handle that. And it could be anywhere from $500 to $5,000, depending on how complicated and how much risk they have in bringing that product in. The broker, as I say, the broker is critical. A broker charges typically $1,000 to $5,000 for 6 months as they onboard the product. as they get it into their system, as their salespeople go out to the retailers and present their product, as they build the flyers and the promotion. So for 6 months, you either pay anywhere from $6,000 to $30,000 to get your product listed, get it into the system. After that, their broker makes a commission. They'll make anywhere from a 3 to 10% commission is reasonable. On slower moving items, it can be a higher percentage because they have to spend more time to sell. And that's really what they're looking at, is how much time they sell, what is the value. The retailer's margin, there are retailers and there are products that the retailer will use as what we call loss leaders. They'll actually lose money on, but they draw consumers into the store. And you see that I can go into Whole Foods, and if I just buy the loss leaders, I get good deals because I'm buying the product that they're selling below cost or selling at a very small margin. Other products, particularly import products, can go up to as high as what we call keystoning, which is double the price. So if I'm bringing in a chip, and it's the only chip in the market, but I sell it very slowly, I'm going to put twice my cost onto it so that I can get the same amount per linear foot in the store. And that's something that's critical, is how much can the retailer make on his space. And so he'll put his profit margin on it based on how quickly the product turns. And the more of a commodity it is, the lower margin he needs to make. The harder it is to sell, the higher margin. A good example of that is retailers here in the US there's not a big demand for rose water, but most retailers will have it in their store. It'll be on a bottom shelf and it'll be at a very high price and a high margin for them because they don't sell a lot of it. And if somebody wants rose water, they'll go and look for it and they'll find it. Other products, the main moving products, the products they make the most money on, are eyesight level. And those are the products they make the most money in. They'll also put kids' products at lower levels so the kids can see it. So it's all in function of how they design their store. And a lot of the distributors will help the retailers manage their shelf space and determine their schematics, their drawings on how things go on the shelf. So these margins here they're not solid gold. They're not fixed. They're not unchangeable. It all depends on the product, depends on the situation, but it's a good thing to figure. Now, wine is handled differently. I'll go through that a little bit here. Each state has different laws as far as alcohol. And our state just recently voted to change it so that a retailer like Whole Foods and Costco actually funded the measure so they could buy directly and import directly. So they can bypass the distributor. But typically the product, it's a 3-tier system. There's an importer, distributor, and retailer. And that's what we did several years ago with Georgian wine. We took a retailer from Whole Foods, we took a distributor that supplies Whole Foods, and we took an importer to Georgia. The importers are the retailers that I can sell it, and then everything else, the dominoes fell, because since he can sell it, the distributor will buy it, and the importer will buy it. So it takes all 3 pieces to make that work. Typically, the importer will, again, take a margin anywhere from 5 to 100%, depending on how quickly the item moves, what the price point is, whether it's a low price item that's going to sell a lot, or it's a high price item that's not going to sell a lot, his margin will adjust. Distributor will make between 28 to 30%. And that's just to handle the product. There are times when a distributor will, for a big food service company or a school district or something, will charge a flat fee. They'll charge 10% or 8% on everything that comes through, and they do it as a service to the big chains, basically. But typically, when they're supplying restaurants or other independent venues, it's anywhere from 25 to 30%. The retailer on wine will make anywhere from 30 to 50%. So it's interesting. The first time I went to Georgia, people wanted to sell the wine at $18 ex works. And the average price at that time of a bottle of wine in the United States was $14 at retail. An $18 ex works product ends up to be about $60 at retail and $120 at the restaurant. Didn't work. So understanding that the markups on wine is critical, and it is controlled. It's funny, you go into the grocery store here and you look at something, particularly hard alcohol, but you look at the Chacha, for example, and it'll say $10 for the bottle, but then you have $6 in taxes. So it's something that's got to be handled a little bit differently than normal. This is Shawn, and it's an 11-minute video. I will provide this to you in the PowerPoint that you can then view the video as opposed to listening to it now. But Shawn, do you want to pitch in on what it says here, your call?
Get a big glass of water and watch it. It gives you in 11 minutes what Jim's going to take in an hour, and I talk very, very quickly.
Yeah, basically it talks about the fact that exporters expect to come in and sell to a Costco or a Walmart or a Trader Joe's because those are the names they see and they hear. And in very few cases do those companies actually import. They're working with the distributor, and the distributor's working with an importer. They will import product that they're going to move a lot of. Water, for example, may be one. If you get a large retailer to do a private label water, they will bring in full container loads because water moves. It's a commodity. A lot of it's going to sell. But typically, it has to go through the distribution system, the broker, the importer, the distributor.
And
so the role.
One thing I can, I lost my train of thought. It doesn't matter. We'll come back to it. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay. The importer's role, the importer sources the product. A lot of the buyers have never been overseas. The buyer to Whole Foods or Trader Joe's or Costco or Walmart, they haven't been overseas. They rely on the importer to find the product, to make sure that the product meets U.S. sanitary standards, and to purchase it, take the risk on the product, making sure it comes through customs, and then inventory it. And a retailer will say, okay, I need 2 cases. A club store will say, I need a pallet. They'll buy 2 cases or a pallet at a time, as opposed to a full container load. The importer's role is to fill that void, so they're the ones who bring in the product. They are the ones who are responsible for making sure that the product is in compliance with U.S. standards. And our laws here have changed recently to where the importer is responsible for the product meeting U.S. standards. In the past, they weren't necessarily responsible. So now throughout the chain, nobody wants to touch it unless it has HACCP or Global GAP, HACCP for sure, Global GAP, BRC, or some other certification, because then they can point to the certification and say, it has this paper, I did my due diligence. So it's the importer's role to make sure that those standards are met. The importer negotiates the price and the terms and coordinates the shipping, customs clearance, and delivery to the warehouse. The large companies they're retailers. They're not importers. They don't handle the product. Now, there are some exceptions. A company like Ziad Brothers, which is a big Middle East distributor, they import, they brand it, and they distribute it. They don't retail it, but they do everything up to the retailing. So sometimes the importer, distributor, and occasionally the retailer are all the same company, but they still fill 3 different roles. So we covered the role of the broker. And again, the broker will charge a commission once they've established the product in the market. And one of the things with brokers is there's the 80%, 80% rule, which means 20% of what they sell produces 80% of the revenue. So they're going to spend their time on the products that they make the most revenue on. When they go in to present a product, Cisco has 40,000 SKUs. They're not going to produce the product they make no money on. They're going to produce the ones that they make a lot of money on, are big movers. So even though they carry all those products, the ones down at the end of the list are strictly on demand. Their salesmen go in and say, today we have a special on this water, or this nut, or this cheese, or whatever, and take the order, because that's where they're making money. So when we're deciding how to work with our brokers and our importers, we want them to make as much money as they possibly can. Because the more money they make, the more they're going to buy, the more they're going to sell. So we don't want to, get the highest price from them. We do want to get the highest price we possibly can, but you also have to balance price and quantity. And keep in mind that if your price is high, the volumes will go down. Your price is low, the volumes will go up. So you have to find the sweet spot for your organization. As I said, the warehouse is solely for delivery. One of our customers out of Lebanon says they're a truck. That's all they do. They have a warehouse and a truck, and they don't get involved in the sales. They don't care what the product is. They just will take the orders, they'll process the orders and ship it through. And again, they'll make anywhere from a low of 6 to 8% if it's something they're handling on a regular basis, and as high as 25%, depending on how quickly it moves. Again, the guy who owns the warehouse is figuring out a pallet space. How quickly am I going to move that pallet? And if he's got something that's going to move quickly, that's going to be a lower margin than something that moves slower. And if it doesn't move fast enough, he will stop carrying it.
Jim, if I can interject here, just terminology. You used warehouses on that slide. You've used another one. We've said wholesalers, and sometimes we say distributors. Those terms, for our purposes for this show, are interchangeable, and you will hear different people using those terms differently. Now, in some markets in the world, they have very different meanings, but here in the U.S., we will use this different terms, but to describe that same function of taking out of a warehouse and delivering it to the customer that's going to sell it to the end user.
Yeah, there's fine nuances that Shawn and I know that aren't important that you know. It's just a matter that there are the warehouse and the delivery, the mechanism. But so the terms are used pretty much the same. You have to figure that the average grocery store has 50 to 60,000 SKUs, stock keeping units. And this picture actually was during COVID. You see all the empty shelves, which is unusual. They couldn't during COVID here in the States. A lot of the commodities were unavailable. A lot of the imports were unavailable. So if you look at that picture, there's a lot of empty shelf space. That has lost money for the retailer. So that's why I took this picture, because that was very unusual to see the empty shelf space. But you can see that on a regular day, they've got 50 to 60,000 items in a regular grocery store. Convenience stores will have between 15 and 20,000 items. Club stores will have even less because they don't have 5 different brands of hot sauce. They have one. They don't have 5 different waters. They may have 2. And here, we'll see in another picture later on, the lane for hot sauce in this grocery store is, probably 36 linear feet. And in a club store, you might have 36 linear feet, but it's going to be one brand. So in understanding the different things, that's your broker's role. You don't have to worry about that, but you have to understand it. And he will be able to say, okay, do we have enough product to supply a large guy, or do we want to stick with a smaller retailer and a chain that's got 5 stores and start with that and build on? That's where your broker is going to help you determine where you should be positioned in the market. This is kind of, again, the concentration in the U.S. food industry. Walmart is number 1. Kroger and Company is number 2. And Kroger is in the process of buying Safeway and QFC. There's a lawsuit trying to block that here in the States because that would make them too big. In my area where I'm at, I have 4 choices, and they will all end up being Kroger if that deal goes through.
And just to clarify, this is store count when we rank biggest to smallest. In terms of dollar revenue, it breaks out differently.
And Aldi, you are familiar with because they have operations in Europe. Here, Aldi is also, they own Trader Joe's. Anyway, there's been a consolidation. This is, again, a good example. This is, again, a good example of the shelf space. Again, this was during COVID on the left here, but this is just coconut water. That shelf there is all the different kinds of coconut water. And what they do is the ones, if you see in the middle, the ones that are in the middle are the ones they make the most money on. The ones in the bottom, they make less. And if they're not making money, they'll change that out. When they change out a product, typically the company that's getting positioned on that shelf is buying that shelf space. And in a lot of cases, they're giving a free case or 2 free cases to each retail store, so they can stock the stock in the store the first time. So they'll get 2 cases that for free. The store won't pay for them. They'll put it on the shelves. As it sells, they'll replace it. So for them to pull something off the shelf, that product has to be failing, and they have to be able to be confident they're going to make more money on a new product. So, one of the things is that on all the products, unless you have something that's totally different and totally unique, you're kicking somebody else out of that shelf space. And again, if you look at wines, I don't have the number in this presentation, but an average Safeway or QFC or an average grocery store will have 6,000 to 8,000 brands of wine. So and a retailer like Trader Joe's will have much fewer, and they'll move more per brand. But Whole Foods has, again, they're going to be at probably 5,000 to 6,000 bottled brands and varieties SKUs, different SKUs of wine. If you look here, this is a grocery breakdown based on sales volume. And unfortunately, from the import standpoint, we're not dealing with meat or poultry. We're not dealing with dairy. It's very seldom do we do a frozen. Sometimes we do a frozen berries. Deli meat, cheese, no. Bread, no. Bakery supplies, no. So really, we're concentrating on this canned goods here and other. So they're between the two of them, they're about 25% of the retail sales. The other carries a wide range of products, as does canned goods. Now, as we talked about, the buyer at retail is motivated by linear foot and how much he can sell per linear foot. And on the next slide. So this is data from the Food Marketing Institute. It says that the average grocery store aims for a $15 to $30 per square foot or per linear foot in sales weekly. So for every linear foot, they expect to get between $15 and $30. And if they get that, if they get to 30, that's great. It gets more shelf space, or it gets in the front of the store. If it's on the low end, it gets moved down on the shelf, and ultimately it gets kicked out. A retailer like Costco, you cannot always find the same brands in Costco because they will rotate the brands through so that you as a consumer are constantly looking for the brands. You're looking all over the store, so you're shopping in different aisles that you normally wouldn't go down. And they will carry the brand that gives them the biggest profit. So it's very competitive. Somebody's into Costco for 6 months, and then somebody else comes and offers them a cheaper price, and they'll move in with that. So it's all a question of how much they're going to make per linear foot. There's a link here, and again, we'll give you this PowerPoint, but this link provides a calculator to figure out that. You can see the different graphics for the store layout or for the layout. And a lot of times a broker will help the store develop that SKU and that layout. For example, Ziad Brothers does all the Oriental or the Middle East food for the retailers. Not only their brand, but everybody else's, and they'll do the drawings and figure it out. If you look here on the right, you've got Green Mountain Coffee, and there's two different packaging styles. They both have the same amount of coffee in them. The one on the left takes up less shelf space. So it's more likely that they're going to prefer the one on the left because they can get more products on the shelf. So when you're doing your packaging, you have to consider how is it going to fit on the shelf. You know, a good example of that is a round bottle takes up more room per linear foot than a square bottle. That's why brands like Fiji Water and I think Icelandic are all square. And so is, those are the two main ones that are square because they take up less space in shipping, but they also take up less space on the shelf. I want to encourage, I'm just getting into ingredients here. Oh, I'm talking. But I borrowed a slide from another show, and that one I had already recorded with the talking. But basically, it says what I needed to say is that the food service industry, the ingredients industry, is an industry that countries that are trying to get into the U.S. should be working on. The industry is huge. There's a lot of further processing. Your sanitation requirements are less because the product's being further processed when it gets here. So it's you don't have to worry about shelf space. You don't have to worry about brand building and consumer preferences. That's all taken care of by the food manufacturer. So when we look at, hazelnuts are a good example. Can we look at a hazelnut paste? Can we look at, unroasted hazelnuts? What is it that can fit into that market? So, and that's not private label. That's just bulk. The brand doesn't matter. So this chart here is a kind of simplified flow of what needs to happen to get product imported here. Every facilities outside the US has to be registered with the FDA. If you're not registered with the FDA, your importer cannot import it. It's a very simple process, and we'll talk about that in a second, but it has to be registered, not inspected, but registered. And then you have to have a designated agent in the US. You have to have somebody that if the product is recalled or the product is damaged, or the consumer has a problem, or the retailer has a problem, there's got to be somebody in the US that is the liaison to communicate back with the manufacturer. So what that does is the US government doesn't want to have to try and track down a manufacturer in Georgia. They've got somebody here in the States, and that person's been designated when the product is registered. And the next line, required permits, that's really for dairy and meat and seafood. Those are much more controlled than a canned product or a frozen or other processed. Meat and the fresh products and the dairy are controlled. You need a permit for that. And in most cases, those do have to be USDA, US Department of Agriculture inspected. Now, the next three I have in red because those are really the importer's responsibility. The importer has to file prior notice paperwork so that customs knows the container's coming in. It has to be filed, I think it's 10 days before the shipment arrives. And if that document is not filed, the product will be held up at customs and not clear. That prior notice has to be filed. It's got to be filed by the exporter, but the importer is the one who's going to make sure you get it done. Customs entry certificate or submission, that's also done by the importer, but they will require documents, ingredient certificates, etc. And then ultimately the product will be inspected or could be inspected by the FDA or a Customs and Border Patrol. In reality, it's about 1% of the containers coming into the United States are inspected. But I've had containers inspected, so I've fallen into that 1%. We actually had containers of stainless steel that had to go and be x-rayed to make sure they weren't full of product. So, and once it goes into inspection, you have no control over it. They could take 20 days to inspect it if they want, and you can't push it forward, can't do anything about it. Your importer doesn't have any control over that, but that is the next step. So we'll just kind of run through these again in a little bit more detail. The FDA registration, it's done online, it's simple. It takes a little bit of time, but it's not complicated. You do have to have information available to fill in the things, fill in the answers. The foreign manufacturers have to comply with US standards now. Like I say, that didn't used to be the case. And the first one is HACCP. If a factory doesn't have HACCP, there's nothing we can do about it. No buyer, I say no buyer is going to buy it without HACCP, though that's not necessarily true. There are some buyers, some diaspora, for example, that will buy product under the brands of that they grew up with, bring it in and sell it and hope that they don't get inspected. But they'll, if you go back to in Washington, New York City, there is Brighton Beach, which is a very strong Russian population. And there's a lot of product there that doesn't have HACCP. It's local brands from, Central Asia or from Russia that make it through and are sold there. And people don't complain, so it's not being stopped. They are trying to increase more. One of the things that I've seen is that up to 50% of the product coming in is not in compliance with with all the FDA stuff. I don't think that number is accurate, but it's still it is a high percentage. It's not accurate. I've had product that has manufacturers that have been banned. They've been blacklisted or red listed by the FDA because their label was not correct. So you got to make sure that everything's correct. Your importer is the one who has to approve that. So instead of you trying to figure out the labeling regulations out of Georgia and what needs to be done here, send your label to the US, let your buyer look at it and approve it. If the buyer looks at it and approves it, then he's taking ownership in it. If it doesn't clear, he's going to go, I was wrong, and work on it. If you do it and ship it to him and it doesn't clear, he's going to say it's your problem. So you want to get your buyers to buy in on that. Foreign Supplier Verification Program is a new program, and the SSVP program, it's done online, but the foreign supplier has to be verified. And again, it's not an inspection, but there's a number of questions that need to do that. Talked about prior notice before the product arrives and the documentation that goes with ingredients. Ingredient certificates are critical, and making sure that all the ingredients are included. Sometimes there's a product in the processing, like sulfur, for example, on dried fruit that isn't necessarily in the product, but it was used, and there can be a trace of it, so it has to be on the label. And there are companies, and we'll talk about that shortly, there are companies that will help identify what the limitations are on specific products. FDA and the USDA really only inspect the meat and seafood and poultry facilities. They have the right to inspect any of the facilities that have FDA approval. And we've heard of times when they're in a country and they're doing inspections because they've had problems. So it's something to make sure that you're in compliance with the FDA requirements, which really, if you're in compliance with HACCP, you're well on the way. And I mentioned BRC, British Retail Consortium, is well accepted here. It's interesting, when we first started talking about it, a lot of people are like, no, that's only for England. No, there's a lot of manufacturers, a lot of retailers that won't take a product unless it's BRC certified, because BRC goes beyond just food safety, but includes some of the other factors that they're involved in. GMP, good manufacturing practices need to be in place, HACCP, as we said, and label compliance. Now, there are some companies that do not have to register based on their size and their product. They can get an exemption from registration. It's better to register and find out that you didn't need to than not to register and find out you did. That's, again, it's all online, what needs to be done. The registration process is simple. You just have to have company information, details about the product, identify an agent in the U.S. and who the owner is of the factory. And it's really more for a liability standpoint. In U.S., people sue all the time, and there's food recalls all the time, and this information is critical for the FDA to have that. And the FDA registration has to be renewed every 2 years between October and December. If you don't register it every 2 years, then you get a red letter or a black letter. Red means a warning, and black means you cannot export here. So you don't want to let that skip. There are no fees to register for the FDA. It's free. But there are a number, and I'll talk about them here. There are a number of U.S. companies that can help with that registration. They can act as your registered agent and perform that role. They charge for the service, but they also provide a lot of other services and support. I recommend using them if you're not well experienced in the U.S. market, but if it's your first entry, they can help you avoid mistakes. I'll talk about some of them here, and the email addresses are up at the top here. The Global Import Agent, they work on getting foreign supplier verification program, and the Preventive Controls Qualified Individuals certification. So any produce, for example, has to have the PCQI, has to have somebody in that facilities that is certified for that. So this is one of the companies, Global Import Agents. Another one is usfoodimports.com. They work with compliance. So again, if you're bringing in an easy product like water or a processed nut, that you may not need to go through this process. But if you're bringing in a ready prepared meal and it's got a number of different ingredients, then you want to make sure that you're avoiding any of the problems, and working with one of these companies will help. This talks about who they serve, and we'll talk a little bit later about e-commerce and e-commerce in the food industry. I remember pre-COVID, I was in New York City at the Fancy Food Show, and everybody was talking about the e-commerce and Amazon supplying groceries. And I told them I'd never buy pickles on Amazon. Well, I have. And it's changed. So the e-commerce for food industry is growing. And when you go through a trade show, a lot of times people will ask, well, how are your sales on Amazon? Because people will launch a product on Amazon and then move it from Amazon to brick and mortar. So e-commerce is a growing sector of the economy. Companies like this, U.S. Food Imports, helps with that, and we'll talk about a couple of others. There's another company that does the Foreign Supplier Verification Program. And again, online is amazing these days, because when I got into export, we didn't have the ability to try and figure this stuff out. Now you can go on and you can watch a video of somebody going through the process of doing the registration. In fact, we have some of them out there from our site. So there's no excuse not to understand the product and the process to getting registered. There are companies, this Registrar Corp, that company is one of the biggest. They will actually register a company here. So if I want to have a US based company, I can register it through them. They will act as the legal agent. And I've personally registered 3 foreign companies in the United States. I haven't used them because I'm a US citizen and I have, the ability to do it. But if I were not familiar with the laws here, I would work with the registration corp to set those up. It's not important that you have a corporation registered here unless you're going to be your own importer, distributor, broker, or sales team. But Register Corp also has registration of food process, or the Foreign Supplier Verification Program. They also have here a number of courses. And these courses, if you're involved in the industry, taking these courses, HACCP certification, for example, $750. These PCQI programs, they help when you're selling the product, they help you avoid problems. And I encourage you to take a look and determine where your weaknesses are. Now this is, we're going to shift a little bit to talk about Amazon because of the importance of Amazon and the opportunities of working through Amazon for entering product in the US market. For example, if I want a product out of Georgia, I'm probably not going to find it at my local grocery store, but I can find it on Amazon. And if I find it on Amazon, somebody else wants in, if I can find it on Amazon, I can get it delivered the next day. So Amazon is a great way to try and get your product to a mass market, but it's a game. There's a real strategy on how to position your product. If you do a search, for example, on a dried mango or water, I'm going to come up with 3,000 different waters on Amazon. How do I get it so that I'm in the top 10? And that's where there are companies and agencies that do that. One of the companies that we've worked with is a company called Lumen Brands. And this is a document that they prepared, but it's interesting. Amazon captures about 1/3 of total shoppers daily. So that means that even though I may go to the grocery store and I look at a product, I'll still go on Amazon and check the price. So I could be sitting in a Kroger or Safeway or Walmart, and I will use Amazon as a price reference, but also a quality reference. I'll look at the reviews. So 2.2 billion viewers a day are visiting Amazon. Amazon is losing customers that are using Instacart. Instacart is, I can go into any grocery store here and I can pay somebody else to do my shopping. And we personally use that a lot because we're busy. So we have somebody go into Costco and pick up, 10 items for us. We pay them a little bit for the delivery, and Amazon's losing some of their business to that. But that's that's through your regular retailers like Kroger and Albertsons and Safeway. 91% of shoppers will read reviews regularly. And getting reviews is like I say, there's a game. Companies will provide benefits for people to review. My family, 3 or 4 members of my family do reviews for other products. They get a free sample from the company. They'll review it. They'll do a post on social media. They'll do a review on Amazon saying how good the product was or if they had a problem with it. So reviews are important. They cost money. One of the things I've seen is that up to 40% of the reviews on Amazon are fake. They're done by bots or they're done by the manufacturer themselves. So there's a challenge with that. The flip side of that is 84% of the people reading those reviews believe that they're all accurate. And it's interesting, in a book that I'm writing right now called Charm Dance, one of the things we talk about is we've all become critics. It used to be that only food critics were food critics. Now we can all criticize wine, and we can criticize cheese, and we can criticize movies, we can criticize restaurants. We're all experts now. We don't have to have any training. And that's one of the challenges you have, is that on Amazon, a product can be reviewed by anybody. So You have to, and a lot of the companies will pay to get the positive reviews. This talks about Amazon's retail shoppers and markets. Amazon is still the largest, though Walmart is aggressively trying to figure out how to compete. And one of the things is that shopping Amazon is 22% of Walmart shoppers find that it's cheaper than Walmart. Even, a lot of products, I go to the grocery store or I go to a hardware store and I find out that it's cheaper on Amazon and it's shorter lead time. Getting your product into Amazon is easy if you have an importer and a warehouse. It's impossible if you don't. But even though you may be in Amazon or Walmart or the other e-commerce, doesn't mean anybody's going to find you. And that's where you need to hire some of these companies to help promote it. Let's see. So Amazon, to be able to sell on Amazon food products, you have to have foreign supplier verification program. They have to make sure that your product is safe. So that foreign supplier verification program, the FDA, all the things I talked about earlier are required before you can sell on Amazon. And in reality, they're really required before you can sell to any significant buyer. The buyers that are willing to accept product that doesn't meet those they're going to be less willing to pay you a good price. They're going to be more risk in getting paid. The big buyers don't have to. Every supplier, meets those qualifications. Here are some more of the importers, and the U.S. import industry. Like I say, the big retailers don't necessarily import directly. They'll import citrus, they'll import water, or they'll import apples or grapes, but typically they'll rely on distributors. But these 4 companies, U.S. Food Imports, UNFI, Cisco, and Kahe, are importers of certain products. And each of them has a special niche or a different niche. Kahe, I never can say that right. Shawn, how do you say it? Kahe?
Hee. I'm just adding another option to your list.
Yeah, they do a lot of organic and natural products. So if you have an organic or natural product, they're one to take a look at. They're a large distributor going to all the natural stores. Cisco, as I say, is food service. UNFI is a product tied in with Super Value and large retail chain. They're actually headquartered down here. Their export and import is headquartered down here in Tacoma, Washington, not far from me. And then U.S. Food Import. So those are all 3 of the majors. There are thousands of small guys that import. One of the challenges is that most of the small importers are importing from their own country, from their own family, from their own experience. So a big importer, he may specialize in Italian imports, Italian products, Italian wine or French wine or whatever. And it's because that's where their family's from or that's where their business is from. So it's very difficult for them to look at something that's outside of their expertise, something that's new to them. So even though there's thousands of them, getting the right ones to take a look at the product is not necessarily easy. And as I say, one of the things that's happening is every product that you have to sell, they're already buying from somebody else. So from whoever they're buying from has to either make a mistake, make a bad shipment, have a claim, miss a shipment, raise their prices, have a crop failure, or something else that makes the supplier or the buyer look for a new supplier. He may have been dealing with the same supplier for years, and they're not going to change as long as they continue to supply. So unless there's a problem, they'll stick with their same supplier. So how do you beat them out? And you beat them out by building a long-term relationship, by providing them with information, providing them with competitive prices, quality, and safety. There's a company that we work with. It's called Opal Group, and it's theopalgroup.com. And they're out of Pennsylvania. But what they do is they can act as a company's back office. They will be the designated agent. They will bring the product through customs. They will warehouse the product. They'll store the product, they'll ship the product, they'll process the invoice. The money then will go directly from the buyer into an account that the exporter holds, and they don't touch that money, but they'll be paid a monthly fee for doing that. So if there's not product in the market, the buyer's not going to buy it. We've got a lot of times we'll go to a show and the buyers that come by will say, great, I love this product. Where can I get it? And the expert will say, well, you need to buy a full container load. They're like, I can't do that. Can I get a pallet somewhere? Can I get a case? This company, Opal Group, will allow you to answer those people with, yes, I have inventory here in the States. I can get you a case. I can get you a pallet. Not a problem. They're well established. They've worked with small companies and large companies as well. A well-known company for that. Another company that does similar is a company called Fair, F-A-R-R-E. Fair, and take a look at, within the Fair site, there is a link to be able to register as a supplier. Fair, as you see, they supply retailers US, Canada, and Europe. And what they do, if I'm a retailer in Oregon and I want a Georgian hazelnut or Georgian wine, I can go to their website and buy it and get a case. My local distributor may not carry it, but they do. So they don't sell to consumers, individual consumers, because everything they sell is on a case basis. But they're a good one. They have a marketplace. They are a B2B, and there's no setup fees, no commitments, but you have to have inventory in that market to supply them. So they provide the venue, they provide the platform, but if you don't have inventory here, you're not going to be able to do it. So that's where you work with them and somebody like an Opal, or you can work with an importer, or you can work with Lumen brands. There's a number of other ways that you can do that. So one of the things, and we use a lot of directories and databases. This is one, the food companies directory. And if you see here on the page that I have is Submit Your Food Company. And one of the links that we sent out when we started this operation was for Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's won't talk to me. They'll talk to people that have a product. If you go on and enter your product on Trader Joe's website as a supplier and they're interested in it, then they'll talk to me. They're not interested in it, they're not even going to answer their phones. So there are some brokers that have good relationships with them that are in to see them on a regular basis. But typically, unless you have to go on first onto their website, enter your product and give them a description. What happens then is it goes into their computer. Their buyer will see that there's a new supplier of this product. If he's interested, he or she will contact them. All of the retailers or the big distributors have that as well. You can go into a Trader or to a Costco. You can go into a Kroger and register your product to be a supplier. In most cases, again, you have to have inventory here. But I encourage you to, if there's, we like to say, let's target who should be buying your product. Once you target them, figure out how you can get in front of them. Sometimes it starts with the registering on their website and a broker, because the broker will help present it. This Foods Trade is, again, a good website, got a lot of databases. There's a list of food brokers there. Choosing a broker is tough because every broker in the world they can sell millions of dollars of your product, and they'll promise that they can sell it, and they'll get you to commit to a monthly fee for 6 months, but that doesn't mean they're going to be successful. And there's no guarantee. They're not going to give you your money back if they can't sell it. They can't control it that they can sell it because they don't know, at the time they signed that agreement, the quality, the price, the lead time, all the other factors that determine whether the customer is going to buy it. That's why they need that money up front. So you may invest in a broker and at the end of the 6 months, they haven't sold anything. Doesn't mean they haven't done their job. It means you either need to adjust your price, adjust your quality, adjust your lead time, or you need a different broker. So there's a lot of different challenges there. Finding the right broker, like I say, every broker is going to swear that they can do wonders for you. Doesn't mean they can sell anything. And it's important to find the right one. And at the end of the day, it's the relationship that they have with you that's most important. If they have a strong relationship with you and they feel like they want you to succeed, then they'll work harder for your product. As we talked about earlier, there's a 20-80 rule. Part of that 20% creating 80% of the revenue is if they feel it's a product or a country that they like. One of the reasons why we were successful on Georgian wine with Whole Foods years ago was because the buyer wanted to go to Georgia. We brought him to Georgia. Then by doing that, he had a commitment in his mind that, hey, since I'm here, if all the price and everything else works, then I'll buy the product. So you have to figure out what motivates the buyer. And sometimes, it's diaspora. Sometimes it's that they want to go to that market. Sometimes they've heard about it. The Carrefour wine, for example, is intriguing to a lot of people. Bajomi, they may be familiar with Bajomi water. They've seen it sold in different markets. So they'll have a feeling for it. So understanding the individual broker, it's more of a feeling than it's a quantified. You can't necessarily give numbers to it. You have to develop those relationships. And that's not something you do at 5 minutes at a trade show. I like to say trade shows are hope strategy. You hope the buyer stops by. You hope they have time to talk to you. You hope you can get their business card. Our job as 2020 is to try and change that hope into we anticipate. We invite people to the booth. We invite people to meet with us. We educate them before the show as to what the products are and what the companies are. Unfortunately, the PLMA does a terrible job of giving us details on who's going to be at the show. They don't publicly provide that information. Even after the show, they don't give us that information on who was there. So I can't reach out to a Trader Joe's or a Kroger knowing that this one buyer is going to be there. I have a list of 20 buyers at Trader Joe's and 20 buyers or 30 buyers at Kroger, and I'll send an email with what we call a sway with a digital brochure on here's the companies and here's their profiles. And I'm hoping that one of the 40 people that I send is one of them that's going to go to the show. And then what we do too is if they open that sway, we can see that they opened it. Then we know who's open, and we can then follow up with a phone call and try and set up in a meeting and stuff. But the show itself doesn't give us any idea on who's going to be there. That's how they control their show, which keeps them making money every year on the shows. This again is the foods trade. You see why private label, why own your own brand. They have an entire section on private label and registering your product so that buyers can see what products are available to private label. Something we encourage you all to do. That's not something we can do. We can facilitate the meetings if they express an interest, but really you've got to go online and enter the data to get it registered. This company here, Guevara, does similar things that Lumen Brands does. They are a e-commerce based program that allows people to list your product, and you can work on marketing. It's more on a case basis than a consumer basis that like Amazon is, but it's another company to take a look at. You can see here they have product from different countries. I looked, they don't have anything from Georgia that I saw, but we hope to get that changed shortly. This is talking about this particular chart. And again, you guys will get a copy of this in PDF format, except the video will be a link, the video shown earlier. You'll get a copy of this, but this chart does a comparison of Guevara versus Lumen Brands. One of the things on Lumen Brands is that they basically require, I don't think it says here, it doesn't, they require a $30,000 investment. They will match that investment, so you're partnering with them on building the brand. That $30,000 is to get it listed on Amazon, to build your website there, to make sure the packaging, they have a computer program that does, I think it's 1.3 million changes in a week to keep up with Amazon's changes in algorithms. Their job is to get your product promoted on Amazon. So it's a program where, the investment from the foreign supplier, it's not per SKU, it's per company. And it is $30,000. That can be done over time. It can be done through discounted product. Lumen Brands actually buys the product, inventories it, and distributes it. So your risk is minimal. It's at $30,000, obviously, but they'll make a commitment to buy X number of cases over a period of time. Yeah, it does talk up top there, the $30,000. So good thing to take a look at. We may be able to get Roop, who's the general manager of Lumen Brands, to have a call with us when we're in Chicago. Good opportunity there. There are few companies that truly compete with them because they're one that actually buys the inventory. Other people expect you to have the inventory here. They'll buy it. The flip side of that is they then have the rights to sell your product. So a particular brand, I mean, you can sell to other people and you do private label, but that brand you're committing to sell to them, to Amazon, but also to brick and mortar stores as well. They start with Amazon in most cases, then they work it back to retail. Amazon owns Whole Foods. So if the product's doing well on Amazon, Whole Foods will snap it up right away. They'll then use the fact that it's doing well on Amazon and Whole Foods to get more buyers for it. Hello. Computer froze.
No mouse is running on my screen.
Huh?
Mouse
Always
was
turned you?
running on my screen.
Yeah, it's not sure what's going on here, but we're almost done. We talk about why it's doing this. See if I can do it.
Maybe unshare the screen and share it again.
Yeah, I'll try that.
You're on slide 52 when we come back in, if it jumps around.
Can you see my screen now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, I can come down here this way. All right.
Next.
Yep. All right, let's go back down here, 52. So there are, again, the internet's a wonderful thing. There's a digital magazine called Food Business Review. And on that, you can find, for example, a list of the top 10 food brokers. And that is a free website. You have to subscribe to get to access to their actual magazine. In some of the industries, they have free magazines because the subscriptions are paid for by the advertisers. I get a daily email from the food industry that you can all subscribe to. This is another list, top food importers. It is a pay per list. You have to purchase it, but they have food importers from all over the world. And we've purchased this list several times and continue to update it. And when we're, for example, if we're promoting a product in Dubai or in Tokyo, we then pull up the database on the importers there, along with our people in those markets to try and identify it. So this is a good database. I think it's under $1,000 for a year. And if you find one good buyer out of it, it's worthwhile. And what they're doing is they're getting information off of bills of lading. So as I said earlier, we have gone into and secured bill of lading data. So I have a record of all the imports of Georgian product that comes by ocean into the U.S. From the beginning of the year. And so far, I haven't analyzed this data yet. As you see here, there's a lot of Bajormi, but there's also, here's jam. It says who the importer is and who the exporter is. It's interesting if you come down here to Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's right here. Trader Joe's, it says not declared on the importer and not declared on the exporter, which means that they have done it in order to order a shipper so that the shipper and the recipient are hidden. But as you see here in this description, we know it's Trader Joe's. So we will continue to reach out to Trader Joe's, but Trader Joe's, for example, is one where you have to go on and register to be a supplier. We provided that link earlier in an email. So another video, this is Shawn, who's talking about the elevator pitch. At the trade show in Chicago, you need to be able to capture the customer's attention in basically 30 seconds. You need to be able to listen to them and figure out what it is that they want, and you need to be able to answer their questions. But you've got 30 seconds to tell them why they should buy your product. The buyer can buy from anywhere in the world, particularly the products we're talking about here. Water, it's tough to separate your water from being unique. Wine, it's tough to separate from being unique. Jams and juices, there are some juices that we don't produce here effectively, like blueberry and blackberry juice. That's the type of things you need to point out, is that we supply those, we're certified organic, etc. So you need to work on the elevator pitch. We will give you a copy of this in a PDF, but we'll also give you the links to the videos for these. And you need to practice your elevator pitch. Again, too many times people get there and don't know how to present it. We were selling honey from Ethiopia, and the buyer who bought 25% of the honey coming to the United States, he says, well, why should I buy your product? And she didn't have an answer. She said, well, because we're women and we're a small group. He says, that doesn't help me. That's not what my customers want. So you need to be able to answer the question of why in the world would I buy their product with very specific answers in a very short period of time. So that is the end of our presentation for tonight. I'll stop sharing, but we can do questions. And we're also, able to answer questions via email at any time. We're here to try and help you guys. And the more we know about your companies, the easier it is going to be for us to sell it. The buyers, buyers don't want to waste their time with companies they're not interested in. So we need to get that information out to them to attract them. So.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that was a great presentation, and I'll be sure everyone who wasn't able to make it today gets it, goes through it. I'll go through it with them if I have to. It's not a problem. And Goga, Alexander, if you guys have any questions right now, or if you think of questions later, I'm sure you can.
First of all, thanks for your presentation. It was very helpful, and you covered all the details, I think, which we have to know. All I need to ask is that I think it will be better to register all these sites which you showed us for the distributor, for the importer companies before the PLMA, yeah? So
yes,
it will be easier to negotiate with the future customers or the future distributors or however they will.
Yeah, the idea is if you register before the show, they're going to be interested in you before they get there, or somebody that in their organization will get aware of what you're doing before they get there. So it pulls it to their attention. We're going to hit them with our emails and with our stuff, but if it hits within their own system, that's going to be much more effective than us hitting them from outside. So once you register, tell us you've registered, because then we'll go out, reach out to them and say, we've now registered, we'll be at the show, how can we talk? And we're committed to, if we can't get enough meetings at the show, but we can get somebody who's sitting in California to talk to us, we can work that out digitally now. So we can, we may have to do it at the time that's suitable for the buyer, which most buyers are already in bed here. But we can do it for the buyers, but we can try and get them to do a digital meeting with us. So, and ultimately, we'd like to invite the key buyers to come to Georgia. Now, one of the problems that happens is buyers working for big companies are not allowed to accept a trip to a country because that's like a gift. So their companies prevent them from doing that. So even when we brought the guy from Whole Foods, he had to take vacation to do it. So we can invite him, but the companies a lot of times say, no, you can't do that because that's a gift, and they can't accept a gift. Now, if the company does it on their own and motivates it on their own, then they come. But so that's one of the next steps that we'll try and do. We want to get them there. The flip side of that is to get you face to face with them, maybe in their office.
In that case, feel free to plan trips to the Georgia, because our holding company has a lot of hotels all around the country as well. And we will love to share our locations. For example, I'm sure that any customer who will see the Kazbeki where our water is mined, he will definitely buy it a lot of.
All right. Well, get those photos to particularly Amanda and Shawn or Ron, if you're dealing with Ron, get them to. But Amanda's the main one. Amanda at 2020dc.com, because she's the one who will put together the sway. And the sway, the better information we have from the sway, the better pictures, the better quality they are, the easier it is for us to get in front of the customers. Copies of your certificates are good because we want the buyer to take the time to look and answer their question. We try to anticipate what's the buyer going to ask. He's going to ask where it's from, what the price is, what the quality is. Are you certified to come to the U.S.? So those are the main things we want to ask. And then if your selling point is the beauty of the location, then let's promote it. Let's get it out there. On water, you'll want to have an analysis because I want to see what makes your water special. So
Sure, I will send you everything.
and it's interesting. Water is there are dozens of waters at the grocery store, and there are waters that claim to be smart. There are waters that claim to be good for females. Water that claim to be good for men. Water that claim to be good for kids. All these different things that are out there now. They're trying to find a specific niche that has demand. We even have, there's a lot of waters now. There's a brand called Hint, which just has a slight flavor of blueberry or raspberry or whatever, and it's a natural juice, so it's all natural. Doesn't have the color, but it's just got a hint of the product, and that's produced domestically. So we need to try and figure out why would they buy from Georgia. It's tough sales. Like I say, the Fiji and Icelandic waters are the only two. Well, and some of the Perrier are the only three that really come into this market. Perrier's Nestle. They got a huge marketing budget. So how do we compete with that? As I say, if you look here at this list that I had of the importers, Bajomi's selling a lot here, but it's probably all going to Brighton Beach. It's all going to diaspora. I know I can't get it anywhere here in Seattle that I can think of. But that's where Amazon changes that, because if I want it, I'm sure I can get it on Amazon. I can check that while we're talking. But
I know usually it's at any like Eastern European kind of Russian markets that there may be.
Yep.
And yeah, I think you can get it on Amazon.
I don't see it. I did. I'm on Amazon right now. I just looked for it. I don't see it, but that doesn't mean that it's not there. Again, it could be on page 6.
Oh, yeah, it showed up for me.
Yeah, it might be based on where you're at though too, because
Oh, maybe,
yeah, the interesting thing with Amazon, and I've listened to a couple of their presentations, when you hover your mouse on something, they know that the chances of you buying that's already increasing, that they've already moved within their system to be able to pick that product quickly. So they're anticipating the demand. So it's quite a fascinating system.
Yeah.
Oops.
Hey, Jim.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. Yeah,
Alex,
you can get it on Amazon.
Alexander asked a question. He says, I wanted to ask you generally, based on your experience, to be more prepared, what are the top key factors we must consider as exhibitors before the show?
Well, as Shawn said there, I think in answer to that, the elevator pitch is first. You need to be able to present it. You need to understand what the competitive and comparative advantage of your products. You need to answer, why would they buy your product? What makes it different? And at the show, there's going to be people selling the same product you're selling from someplace else, and probably from the US even. I don't know if there's going to be any private label wine people there, but there will be water. There will be the jams and juices and that type of stuff. So why would I buy it from Georgia versus from somebody in St. Jordan or not Jordan, in California or even Mexico? So we have a good, obviously Mexico is the largest trader right now with the United States, and they have a lot of the fruits and vegetables that we don't have here. So you need to be able to say, why would they buy it? Your materials have to be in good English, though they can accept some errors, but you need to have a native English speaker review it. We've seen situations where when you read it in English, it's technically right, but it doesn't work because of the culture. We had a product that was coming out of Peru that it was a product that was coated with chocolate, and they said it was bathed in a bathtub of chocolate. And to an American, we're like, oh no, you don't put chocolate in your bathtub. I'm not going to eat any food that was in your bathtub. So, it's technically right. It was bathed in a bath of chocolate, but it wasn't right. So having a native English speaker review the materials helps, even though, and you may speak English fluently. We all speak English. It was funny. I was in Hong Kong several years ago, and I was there with a guy from Hong Kong, a guy from India, a guy from Singapore, a guy from the U.S., and a guy from Scotland. We all six spoke English, and none of us spoke the same language.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
I can,
So, yeah,
I
that's-
can help with that.
Yep. Shawn, do you have anything else to add on that I didn't cover?
Not really. I think you covered that one fairly well. I did want to point out, because Alexander and I have talked earlier, setting expectations. Going to this show, you will not come home with a purchase order. If you do, I will buy you dinner. It will be very unusual. But one of the things that you need to be prepared for is to ask questions and learn about the expectations of the buyer that you talk to. An example, last year we went to the same show with companies from Jordan, and they had canned fruits and vegetables, and much like the juice companies, they can buy beans and corn and whatever canned foods from the US or from Mexico and from all over the world. So they were faced with the same challenge. One of the companies, we had a buyer who talked to a lot of the exhibitors, and that one buyer said, I have the ability to buy full containers, but I won't. I will buy full truckloads once you land it at a warehouse in the US. And so that wasn't something that some of those exporters had considered. And so we had to help them find where you would warehouse products and change their expectation. Another company, another exporter, was very interested in the same buyer, and the buyer was interested in their product. But when the buyer explained the credit terms that they buy under, they pay 90 days after they get delivery of the product. And then if you back up a week's transit time from the warehouse to the buyer's location, and then 21 days on the water, the manufacturer said, I can't carry that working capital. I can't afford to sell you because I will go broke before I get paid. So we learned some things. Unfortunately, we learned what we had to be able to deal with if we were ever going to sell that account. And in that particular case, the manufacturer went back home, talked with the project, talked with local financial institutions, and said, how would we arrange financing so that we can afford to take this order when we don't have the cash flow to make that sale. So there are a lot of things that this is an educational trip, and the most valuable thing you're going to come out of the show with is a stack of business cards and an opportunity to follow up with that customer so that you can get them the samples, you can get the pricing, you can get the certifications they want. It may not apply to the products we have here, but there were a number of buyers who were interested in either halal certification or kosher certification, which is not something that the exporters out of Jordan had anticipated. But when they said, yeah, we can do that, or we have done that before, it moved the conversation along. If they, and what I told Alexander or one of the other juice companies was, what we don't want to do is say, no, we can't do that. We want to say, that's interesting. Let me ask some more questions so I understand what you're looking for or what you need. Let me go talk to the rest of the people in my factory and see how we could do that for you. Because sometimes what they ask for, we can't say yes to, but we can say yes in a different way. Once we understand what it is they're trying to accomplish. Sometimes the case count is different, or we had one, I want your cookies, but I want it in a tall, skinny package because it's going to go on a peg hook. It's not going to go on a shelf. And this manufacturer had never thought about packaging it that way. Their first inclination was, no, we don't, that's not what we sell. We had a conversation, they went home, they thought about it. They said, okay, we could, if we did this, that, or if you could commit to a given volume. So ask questions, don't say no, ask questions, and we'll learn some things along the way.
Well, there's a Shawn hit on a lot of things that are actually in the book that I'm writing called Charm Dance. Communication is critical, and understanding listening is part of that communication. And a lot of times the salesman wants to talk, but you really need to listen to what the buyer has to say. What are their needs? What are their problems? How do you solve their problem? How do you get the product that meets those needs? And that means you got to listen, but you also have to ask the right questions. And the other thing is that's also in the book is to produce what you can sell, not sell what you produce. So, you may produce, and one of the things we see a lot of times is the packaging that sells in Georgia or in the EU won't sell in the US because our consumer sizes are different. Our retail shopping habits are different. And we do that. The biggest extremes on that is what sells in Japan and what sells in the US. In Japan, they buy a 1 kilo bag of dog food. In the US, it's 40 kilos because it's that we pick it up with our SUV. They carry it home off of the train. So understanding what your buyer's needs are. Some of the buyers are serving, the consumer at Costco is completely different than the consumer at Walmart. The profile is different, and the quality needs and the price needs are different between the two of them. And you need to understand that. And you need to understand that when you're talking to them. Oh, you're with Costco, therefore I need to emphasize quality. Oh, you're with Walmart, I need to emphasize price. And those are all things that you learn with experience and exposure. One of the things that you need to do is be a student of the market. I can't go into a grocery store without spending an hour. My family hates grocery shopping with me because I'm picking up everything going, where's this from? Where's this from? What ingredients are in this? And that's what you need to do. And that's one of the things we'll get out of Chicago too, is when you're not at the show, go to the grocery stores. Unfortunately, the location is a terrible location for that. There's not a lot of stores right there. But if you go downtown, and we may be able to set something like that up to look at some of the grocery stores to get a feel, because you need to understand what it is that motivates the buyer. So, and now you can do that sitting in Georgia. Let's do it sitting in Tbilisi. I can tell you what's for sale in Chicago. I can tell you what's for sale in Japan. I can tell you what's for sale anywhere now. Couldn't do that before.
But if there is interest, we will try to arrange. That's one thing that Alexander and I talked about, is he would very much like to see the retail set for juice. And what we have seen at shows around the world is we all think that we have very unique, very different products. And you go to an international show and find out there's a lot of companies doing exactly the same thing you are, and understanding the cultural differences, the packaging, and the marketing helps you have a better understanding of how to fit in this market as opposed to your home market.
Share my screen one more time here. So yes, Bajormi is on Amazon, and they have their own page. They have their own store. So they've got somebody, they've hired an agency that has built this page and built it, they're going to have a video here. It's all here. But what it is they've got an advertising agency, and they have a company that's doing that, and they have inventory to sell from. If you look back here, the Bajormi has where I'm at in Seattle, which is where Amazon is headquartered. There's a 2-day delivery time. So 2 days here, Prime 2 days. So it delivers to me. Prime means I don't have to pay for shipping. I get it in 2 days. So, and that's what Lumen Brands does, is they build this page for brands. And then they see here at the reviews, they've got 103 reviews, which is okay. It's not a lot, but it's not none. And there's 5 stars, and they've got some 1 stars. They've got 17% are 1 stars. So you have to look down, and this is a good thing for you to do if you're a water sale. Why are they getting 1 stars? What's wrong with it? Is it the shipping? Is it the packaging? Like a totally different water.
Yeah,
Order was
I have
broken,
my
so it's
Amazon.
shipping. But
I have my Amazon location set to Delaware. It's a freight forwarding company, but they have plastic bottles and they have 24-pack of cans, and it's about the same. I think they got 4-star.
yeah,
4
3.9
star.
not bad. But so what happens is these 103 reviews, most of those were probably paid for. Consumers typically don't go on a review. They don't have the time. So that's somebody that's been paid to review. If you look here, well, this one's got 400 reviews. Let's look at, let's go to Fiji Water. Fiji Water has 14,080 reviews. So 103 is nothing. So, and from an exporter standpoint, looking at this online to see what, you got the package, you got the colors, you got the, what's selling. We don't have right now, but you can buy a service that allows you to look in deeper to see what the profit margin is, what Amazon's taking, and everything else. I don't have that right now because we're not focused on it. Roop at Lumen Brands does. He can look at any particular product and say they sold 300 cases yesterday. Their average margin is this, etc. That's all available to him, and it could be available to us if we wanted, or it could be available to the exporter if they want to pay for the service. But here's Icelandic Water, 15,000 reviews, and most of those are not paid for. Probably 103 of them are, but most of those are people going on. If you look here, there's only 3% of 1 star. And it looks like it was packaging. The water is fine, packaging. So. Anyway, I'll stop sharing. Any other questions we can answer now? All right, well, I encourage you to get us as much pretty pictures and details as you can, because next week we'll get that email sent out to, I think, probably a list of about 1,200 buyers that we've established. Again, we know the companies that are going to be there. We don't know the individual.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. Let us know if we can answer any questions.
Yeah, I know it's late over there, so thank you
Thank you all.
Right.
Yep.
Cheers. Good night.
Bye.
Good day. Bye.